different place. To experience this won't hurt you, and there is nothing to fear. In recent episodes of this series, we've reviewed the mythic ship of heaven, a vehicle of the ancient sun god. Close to the Earth, a crescent on the face of the immense planet Saturn turned in the polar sky, brightening and dimming in an archaic daily cycle. Ancient words and symbols for this cycle invariably reflect the symmetrical opposition of the crescent in its contrasting phases. A phase of growing bright and a phase of growing dim. Crescent to the left and crescent to the right. Crescent above or below, all in explicit connection to a daily cycle with no counterpart in any celestial behavior observed today. And this unique behavior, by its specificity, gives us an ideal opening to the ancient myth of the heavenly twins. It seems that every well-documented culture preserved memories of the primeval twins, but few researchers appear to have noticed the underlying unity of this theme. The closer we can get to the more archaic cultural expressions, the more clearly the improbable unity will stand out. Some of the particulars are long familiar. Astrologically, the cosmic twins find their most popular expression in the constellation of Gemini. Of course, the story itself is never explained, and the constellation is just one of numerous echoes of the global archetype in later times. But what inspired the original idea? In our reconstruction of the ancient sky, the answer comes from the fundamental role of the rotating crescent, reflected in the strategic placement and unique gestures of the cosmic twins around a central figure. And we see the same geometry in the two faces of the ancient god himself. Two contexts of the mirror images stand out. The first points back to the crescent above and below, and the second to the same crescent in its positions to the left and right in the daily cycle. By far the most data comes from the Egyptian symbolism expressing the mirror-like aspects of the crescent in the concept of the symbolic Ka, usually translated as a double. But why was the Ka hieroglyph simply a pair of arms? Our explanation is that the crescent form when seen behind the polar column that is so fundamental to this reconstruction readily provoked an imaginative interpretation as two arms or wings. In fact, the Egyptian Ka symbol was the perfect expression of the twin-like aspect of the crescent, one position in the daily cycle appearing as a mirror or twin of the opposite position. Upright arms in the phase of growing bright, inverted arms in the phase of dimming. The concept of a double in the sense of a mirror image could not be more appropriate. The symbolism is abundantly evident in iconography of the Phoenician goddess Tanit. In ancient Egypt, the concept also found expression in the oppositely placed twin goddesses Isis and Nephthys in mirror positions to the left and right of the central sun god Ra, or one of his mythic counterparts. This connection to the enclosing crescent will explain why the arms or hands of the twin goddesses so frequently displayed an enclosing aspect in relationship to the king. When paired as twins, divine figures represented the two halves of the celestial kingdom, marked out by a revolving crescent in its daily circuit. In the pyramid text, the king declares, "Isis is before me, Nephthys is behind me." Or the two mistresses of Buto accompany you to the right and left. Or alternatively, the king declares that the goddess Neith is behind me and Selket is before me. Again, nothing in natural experience today will account for the pervasive imagery. The twin aspects of the giant sphere of Saturn came to identify that sphere as the vast womb of creation itself. O you two who conceived Ra, you shall give birth to me. The two great ladies, Isis and Nephthys, bore you. My mother is Isis, my nurse is Nephthys. The king ascends upon the thighs of Isis, the king climbs upon the thighs of Nephthys. Elsewhere, in imitation of Ra, the deceased king aspires to shine between the two thighs of Nut. Keep in mind that these roles of goddess figures placed into the service of crescent symbolism must not be confused with the role of the planet Venus, the prototypical goddess, in our reconstruction, a quite different topic discussed earlier, with much more discussion to follow. Our point here is that the cosmic twins find a persuasive explanation in the twin-like aspects of the revolving crescent. For example, the crescent is the image of a cosmic ship. See that connection, and the identification of the sun god's boat with the cosmic twins comes as no surprise at all. The twins Isis and Nephthys were named the two boats. Or alternately, the Egyptians invoked the two boats as Autet and Sektet. Autet, the descending boat of growing strong, was linked to the left side of the primeval sun, as we would expect, while the ascending Sektet boat, meaning growing weak, was linked to the right side. These twin aspects of the revolving crescent give us a key to the larger panorama of Egyptian symbolism. For the Egyptians, the position of the crescent above and below marked out two regions called the two Auterts. Chapter 141 of the Egyptian Book of the Dead identifies the upper Autert with inactivity or dimness, usually mistranslated as the region of the night ship, but literally meaning the ship in its phase of dimming or growing weak, at the top of its circuit. Conversely, the texts connect the so-called day ship, literally the ship of brightness, with the lower Autert, all in perfect harmony with the symbolism we've already noted in our previous discourses. Right and left, above and below, are the essential qualities of the cosmic twins. For example, in Egypt, we see the aspects above and below in the symbolic pairing of the figures Nut and Geb. The goddess signified the upper region, and the male half, the lower portion of the circuit, was defined by the male power Geb, denoting also the twin peaks of Akhet, the world mountain. Together, the two mythic images meant the unity of the celestial domain, considered as the prototypes of Egypt, the two lands, upper and lower, seen as a copy on earth of the divine plan first displayed in the sky. The idea was stated emphatically by Henry Frankfurt in his groundbreaking book, Kingship and the Gods. The so-called two lands of Egypt, he said, reflected the original order of creation itself. Indeed, every primary interpretation of the revolving crescent was predictably linked to the dualities of above and below, or left and right. It was not just as a pair of outstretched arms that we see the twin roles of the crescent, upright in the phase of growing bright and inverted in the phase of growing dim, and not just in the symbolism of the cosmic ship. We've seen the same symbolism of the archaic day and night in oppositely or symmetrically positioned horns, and most incongruously the upright and inverted twin peaks of heaven. In all instances, the upright and inverted forms express precisely the same connections to the phases of the daily cycle. The most fundamental fact about the cosmic twins is that they are not just twins, but they surround and enclose a venerated god or king or central star, confirmed by simply observing how the symmetrically placed arms or arms and wings so frequently enclose and protect the king. Amongst the most famous of primeval twins were the Greek Dioscuri, who, according to the leading expert A.B. Cook, represented two halves of a celestial circuit. Here we see the Dioscuri in a pose directing us to ancient symbolism of two enclosing arms about a central orb or star or divine figure. Since the cosmic twins are mirror images of each other, it's not surprising that the Greeks retained the connection by placing the central star and the two Dioscuri on a mirror. In mythic terms, the contrasting twin-like positions of the illuminated crescent were the two faces of the primeval power Janus, giving rise to the so-called Janiform countenance. Thus, Ioannis the Lydian describes the ancient celebrants honoring the god Janus on the first day of January, his month, dressed up in a two-faced mask, and people call him Saturnus, identifying him with Kronos, the Greek god of Saturn. Of course, the entire idea can only appear absurd, but from the vantage point of our reconstruction, it is the predictable, the inescapable astronomical connection. And by this reasoning from ancient facts, we acquire a starting point for a new and radical interpretation of the cosmic twins, a subject to which we'll return after laying further ground on the visual dynamics of the polar configuration.